Welcome everyone. Today we'll talk about data visualization. In this presentation, if you want to see it, I will be watch this particular video very clearly and slowly and steadily. In fact, I would love if you can rewind and watch the data visualization because no wonder the videos will be on a static mode probably, but you will have a better understanding of classification of visualization that I would love to portray. Otherwise, all of you can always refer to a lot many visualization technique that is prevalent, and with the advent of 3D Max, Maya as a software, things can be done in a much better fashion for data visualization thereby. So data visualization is nothing but a glorified communication in its best of its elements, which can attract any number of audiences, any number of people, no matter what their mother tongue is, no matter what language they speak, whether they at all speak or not. Data visualization, if presented in a nice fashion, would captures everybody's attention. So principles of graphical excellence are only four. That is of clarity, precisions, efficiency, maximize ideas, and probably minimize ink. So use of lot of white space, capture the attention thereby. So we are talking about clarity, precisions, efficiency, maximize ideas, and minimize ink per se. We are here. That is what we are looking forward to. So database in a nutshell, we'll talk about the history, the graphical basics, the details to make your business much more understandable, much more approachable, much more human to the end customer. So we need to talk about this database in terms of history, graphical basics, and the details all about it. Data way back in 10th century was always haphazard. Data was unifocular. In fact, it was always in bicolor methodology. Look, this is what has been done. We are talking about the movement of, let's say, we're talking about somewhere on the corner, the Venus, the Mercury, the Saturn. With this is what we are talking about, the Mars. And look, does it make sense? Does it appeal to you? Probably not. But this is the exact replica of data being represented in the 10th century. Then comes some of the another things that has been mentioned in terms of a war front. You know what has been happening, how land has been mapped. Now this is where it has been done. Does it make sense? Approximately with a thread, if you go across, this is a thread that comes, and they are likely to measure them according to the distances of the places that has been located out here. Gives a fair bit of an idea, but it is not at all accurate. It does not reflect the true representation. And then is the modern maps, which were still crudely in the form, but definitely it has better perspective. If you look into it, the continent are visible in this time: the African, the American continent, the Indian continent, the China, the Arabia continent. Everything has been said, stated, forwarded. So map is becoming the most visualizations of data that has been relevant and has been oftenly rapidly used by one and everyone. Then we have a landscape data. Now this is much more detailed in the format where the roads can be mapped, roads can be taught about it, the buildings can be looked into it. And now what is we having around, even with the advent of Google Maps, things have become much more clearer. Now look at the charts of all imports, of all export. Let's say for the Kingdom of England, way back in 1700 century, 17 to 1782, by W. Playfair, who has done this particular data. If you look into is what is the balance in the favor of England, line representing imports of England and line representing exports of to England, as what we are looking across it. And this is a wonderful data, probably much better represented, but nevertheless it doesn't captures everyone's attention. Sometimes one variable is enough altogether. Now something with the monthly outgoing mail workload, millions of unit comes around it. October 1968, October 1970, and October 1972. Look, what we are talking about, it's just a singular data that has been mapped around in the frequency, which might be erratic, and it has been noticed that in the month of October it reaches the pinnacle out there. Now, can we add this space problem and bring into the context of time into it, adding space and time, it becomes much more of a confusion. If we add more variable things, gets to be again has to be dictated, and again a person has to be made to understand. Well, this graph lose its very purpose of being the simple representation. So let us unify maps, the space and the time series thereby, and how can we go across with it. And if you look into it, Karthik Figurative uh, did a wonderful job to a certain extent. What was existing and what has been the new renovated version that comes around it, this has been graphed all together. Look, the time has been slotted at the very bottom which comes around it, and the place out on the top. This is what we are looking around here. This is needs to be understood as far as possible. We'll talk about the death rate of a male for lung cancer in 1950s, per capita consumption of cigarette in 1930s in various countries. If you look into it, you see a linear line which goes around here, right? Somewhere on the corner, we have a host of nations, right from Iceland, Norway, Sweden, Canada, Australia, Great Britain, Finland, and so on and so forth. Everybody has been marked with representing to lung cancer in 1950s and their cigarette consumption in 1930, somewhere around 20 years of lag. And does it reflect, is there any correlation between these two? Again, pictographically well represented. Now this is where we are looking into it. A graph can tell you a story, a wonderful story that comes around it, something all about the fruit. What this is what the pick is all about. It's 0, 50, 100, the cause and effect relationship. What is the effect and what are the causes behind it? Database in a nutshell. We'll talk about the graphical basics this time, and how do we go around it. Elements of a plot. A plot can be done, absolutely yes. We can always plot it out. We can have the uh, see, this is a simple plot that is carried forward. Then we can bring in the axes, as in the dependent and independent variables that comes around it, or means time slotted, and the substance of interest or data of interest or figures of interest that can be plotted on the y-axis. Probably that is it, and give a title to the chart, and that is what the element comes around it. So we have geographic objects which might be circular, which might be rectangular, which might be square bases. Then we have the scale and coordinates, and the last would be annotations. Now this is my elements of plotting, everything that if integrated together, right from geometric objectives, sorry, geometric objects, scales and coordinates and annotation thereby. Here, if we amalgamate those three things, we find an elements of plot. It makes some sort of sense availing to it. Then we have the aesthetics of a plot. What is going around it? The position thereby, the shapes, the colors, the line, the width, the line type. We can change everything. It can be from dotted line to semi-dotted line to a line which is perfectly true to its size. We are talking about everything that is mentioned out here: the position, the shape, the size, the line width, the colors. Aesthetic maps to visual representation. Now we can have table formatted, escaped into it. Let's say positions being marked by circulars B with a colored circle B. The shape can change, and each shape can have its own connotation, own meaning for that, own characteristic. The colors can be representing. Now this is what the maps data is all about it, and the visual representation that comes around here. Let me give it to you a glorifying example. Look at it. We have placed three cities or four places altogether. The four places are Chicago, San Diego, Houston, and the Death Valley. Now, what are these four places been looking into it? We are looking their temperature at a different point of time in a year. Let's say in the month of January, which is the coldest place. Obviously, yes, if you can look into it, Chicago scores the lowest thing. So it is the coldest place. Which is the hottest place in the month of October, July, October? Let's say it's the Death Valley. Absolutely, it goes by leaps and bounds. Everywhere temperature rises, but there are temperature fluctuation at certain places, and those are extreme. Now, don't you think aesthetic map actually tells you a lot of things? Then we can have map data to a visual representation, which might be known as a heat map. This is something which can be giving out exactly when is the right place to visit, or what will be the climate or the temperature at a certain point of time in a year. This heat map will actually show again the previous chart, but in this case it is represented in a different fashion in terms of the heat that it goes around it. Chicago remains the coldest place, and San Diego remains the hottest place in the month of June, July, and August, and everything in between. And look at the temperature varying from 40 degree Fahrenheit to 100 degree Fahrenheit per se. The types of visualizations in terms of amounts. Now we have called group plots, which can be horizontal, which can be vertical. We have the stacked bars, again can be horizontal, again can be vertical, and then we have heat maps as I have shown to you, right? So we have the stack bars and the group bars that comes around it. So let us look at the types of visualization in terms of bars which has been given. Now this is what I call a horizontal bar, and this is what I call a vertical bar, and then they can be represented simply and statedly with the thoughts thereby. That is what we need to go around it. Essentially, what captures our fancy, essentially what captures our attention is what we are looking into it. Let us look into the bar plot by far. Now, if you look into the bar plot, you will see what is happening around here. It's simple and straightforward. The average chlorophyll and in the month, where it has been absent or where it has been present. July and August, things are not there. Average chlorophyll goes out of the scenario, out of the picture, which might not be the case where it is congested in the month of September per se, October per se. And that is how it is all about it. The bar plot will be able to tell it to you. So let us know what is wrong with here. Now, if we can say about the Hollywood releases, Raut, what happens is which movies are doing good, which movies are decent, and which movies are not absolutely performing well. Now, this can be shown by the box office collection in terms of $1 million rupees that has been collected in the box office. Yes, we are talking about the gross weekend. And out here, if you see Star Wars wins hands down, this is what needs to be taken into consideration, followed by Jumanji, as is the case, wherein Ferdinand, the Pitch Perfect 3, or the Greatest Showman does not have that rousing impact onto the box office collection. So I might safely say to avoid those three movies of Ferdinand, Pitch Perfect 3, and Greatest Showman, probably if I have money to spend, I would love to watch Star Wars as a first option, and the second option remains Jumanji per se. And that is what we are looking. The bar graph will tell me what to do and what not to go. Now, this can be regularly, and should I say, it can be arranged in a different fashion in which itself, the graph itself, once you see it out there, it will give you the right perspective altogether. Uh, what needs to be done and what needs to be avoided, as in the Pareto chart is to be implied upon here. Which all movies are the movies to go for? So what is wrong out here? Again, something very simple. Let's say the median income of in terms of dollars and the number of age that a person requires around it. Let's say $60,000 is something what we are looking into it on an annual basis. If you look into it, anybody who is earning above $60,000, that means approximately $5,000 a month. You see the strata would be beyond the age of 45, absolutely, and beyond the age of 35 to a certain extent. There are number of people who would be earning this thing, but as you go down the age, let's say absolutely down the age, let's say 25 and 34, people are just about earning around $5,000 a month. Most of them are earning less than $4,000 a month. Some of them are actually earning around $3,000 a month or something like that, and plentiful of them are would be earning somewhere around 2,000 or $2,000 or less than that. So that accounts for 15 to the age group of 24 and beyond the age group of 74. Rest are in between this middle age group. So what's wrong out here? Look what we need to talk about it. We can arrange it, right? We can arrange it in a histogram basis. In an histogram basis, this will be completely on a normal curve. You will be able to see that people above the age of 74 and below the age of 24, they might not, the earning capacity is not very high, whereas people in the age group of 35 to 54, the earning capacity is at the best, if I may say so, followed by 55 to 64 per se. So bars are not always right. I'm saying so. That is why I say Pareto bar chart needs to be utilized. Well, that is why I say so. Histogram needs to be utilized, and that is what we are looking at. Give me an expectations of what is wrong with this particular graph. Here we are plotting life expectancies in a years when in a number of countries, and look, is this a good expectation or good representation? Probably bad. Now this bars are not always right. Now here is a plot graph. Now plot graphs will tell me which of the country which is way ahead. Look at the expectation, life expectancy in numbers of years for Canada, way high. Costa Rica has been followed partly in the second position. Then, as a neck-to-neck basis, Puerto Rico, Chile, Cuba comes around me. When the horrible position has been occupied as far as the life expectancy is covered is by the country called Haiti. Probably has been seconded by Bolivia, Trinidad, Tobago, and so on and so forth. Now, this is what needs to be understood. The type of visualization comes around it. It is the distribution that talks around, be it a histogram, be it the density plot, the cumulative density, and the QQ plot thereby. You need to understand when to employ which kind of graph so that it becomes easier for the decision maker to arrive to a decision thereby. So, type of visualization as far as distribution here has been reflected for you to look what is done with the histogram flow show frequency, wherein it tells me exactly which are the areas which wherein chlorophyll would be available in abundance. Did you remember I said about Star Wars being an histogram things? That was it, where it been actually shown, followed by Jumanji. Whether in the other bar graph, the bar graph it was in a haphazard fashion, but in a Pareto chart, sorry, but in a histogram, it will tell you very clearly what is to be done. So type of visualization in multiple distribution. Look what we are looking into it. The plot boxes essentially done for the stock market essentially um, uh, will have a start point and an end point. In between there will be a candle and there will be a wick. The wick can be at the top and the bottom of the candle thereby. So what are we looking into it? The violin plots, absolutely yes. There might be something called a normal curve in between. The average comes and we can be depicted very easily. The jittered plot, it was a cluttered plot of the absence, or should I say the presence of certain elements that you wanted to notice. Sine plot is again something similar to it. Yes, here is a come where we can have plot over a plot, or something called a histogram, stacked histogram, overlapping densities and ridgeline plot as the case might be. You look at this particular videos and look what is meant by box plot, violin plot, jittered plot, cine plot, stacked histogram, overlapping densities, and ridgeline plot thereby. We talk about blocks plot to show variations. Show variations of what? What is happening? What about the candle and what about the wick? The wick might be very thin, very straight, but yes, that actually took place. This is what we need to be understood. Or the point range. Now, this is where the point range comes around it, which will give you the point range of the graph that has been moved around it. Temperature in a particular month might have a variation of more than 30 degree Fahrenheit in between. It might have been located most of the days would be within 2-3 degrees, but there was certain fluctuation at certain point of days where it was either extremely hot or very ultra cold as might the case might be. So there might be a fluctuation. They might have dipped, the temperature might have dipped even for a moment, but that happened. And that is what the point range would be depicting. Visualizing uncertainty is surely difficult, very difficult. Error bars, we are talking about an error bars in the numbers, 2D error bars, the graded error bars thereby, and how do we come across? So what is wrongful in the bar represented in 2ST of the temperature? What is wrong? Look at it. If there's a range that has been given around it, we can visualize the distribution vis-a-vis uncertainty. Yes, this is the confidence strip. I's, the half i's, the quantile dot plot as the case might be. The confidence strips will be telling me what is my confidence at which point of time. The i's and the so on and so forth. The half i's, the quantile dot plot. How do we go across with it? How does this view differ? Look what we have changed into it. We have changed the plot diagrams, the block plot diagrams completely, including the wick, and has brought into it. Does this view differ? Probably to a certain extent it becomes a differ, but it gives another weightage as to what is expected. It's tempting to plot raw data, but be careful. Absolutely be careful. Why? Because why is it tempting to build with or plot a raw data? Because that means you are not building in any bias. But the moment you bring in the bringing a certain format to it, you are helping with the data visualizations and arriving at a decision. That is the reason why it should be plotted. Instead of this data, if we can have done in this kind of scenario, similar data would we have done it. But out here is the raw data that has been given, and it will give you more or less the same idea that I wanted to give through it to you. So a lot of ways to visualize data, a lot of ways to visualize distribution, a lot of ways to understand uncertainty. And here is a replication which has been done, on which on the y-axis we have plotted the brand, on the x-axis we have plotted the satisfaction, and that is what we are looking. Now, for what kind of brand and satisfaction? Probably the domesticated animal food, let's say cat food or a dog food. How the owner is happy with it. Availability of cat food is much more, or dog food is much more. So relationship between variables. Again, here we need to understand when we are going to utilize a scatter plot, when we are utilizing to a bubble chart, paired scatter plot, and slope graphy. Now, how do we come across with it? Be the scatter graph, bubble chart, paired scatter plot, and slope graph. Relationship between variables with a lot of data. And this is where we can have the density contours, the 2D pins, the hex beams, the cardiograms, as the case might be, what we are looking forward to it as on when on basis. The scatter plot show relationships which might be haphazard, which might cover the whole area, but you need to understand there are certain areas where the density is either too thin or they are too thick. Those areas are unmissable per se. Correlation to understand those relationships. Now, this is the correlation where you can bring in the availability of a temperature or non-availability of it, about your minerals that comes around it. Look at two scatter graphs that have been shown. It is the same graph, but two different representation. On the left side is the same correlation. On the right side, it has been in a different way of presentation, which attracts your attention, which helps you to come to a conclusion. Is up to you. I am the one who is actually giving you a certain visualization that needs to be taken into way. Alternative ways to view correlation efficiently. Look what is happening in alternative ways, which methods, which elements are directly correlated and which way are inversely correlated to one another. And if you look into it, the graph will tell you the methodologies, the things which makes an impact or which it doesn't make an impact, or is been simply ignored or irrelevant. Should your data be connected? Yes, definitely yes. But if this is the way you want to go around it, let's say you have two or three sets of data based on different plot diagrams, you are just only coloring the things, you are mostly confusing the decision maker with your graph. And that is the reason why I keep on saying data visualization is an art, and not everybody will be good at it. Look at it. This is the way the data should have been representative, and it gives a fair bit of an idea of what exactly is happening with the three companies that I'm talking about it. About the three companies, the three dotted line. Vis-a-vis the earlier things, which was the plotted graph, it was confusing. People had to actually scrutinize their brain to come up with a conclusion. So geospatial visualization is all about the maps, the choropleth, the cartogram heat map per se. We have already discussed these things, be it map, chloropath, cartograms, and cartogram heat map, combining the data source and probably the map around it. Now, where is the chlorophyll A abundant? It is near the water bodies if I'm talking around it. And if you want to combine the data sources and the map, you come up with latitude, longitude, and here it goes. Absolutely impeccable and spot on, if I may say so. Visualizing uncertainty in relationship is difficult. Confidence band, graded confidence band, and the fitted draw thereby. How do we come across as the case might be? This is visualizing. Now, database in a nutshell. Let me come to the third aspect of making your business or much more understandable. I have done with the history, I'm done with the graphical basic. Let me give you the details to make your is very, very relatable. Now, can we have a coordinated system of transforming relationship? This is what we can have it. We can do it on a horizontal basis. Look what is happening out here. This is more or less very uniform. This one is very uniform, whereas this one is a bit skewed. Why? You look at the horizontal lines; they are on the top shelf. And on the other hand, if there is been represented in a different format in the way of circles, things would be are we bit different as the case might show it to you. So that is what needs to be understood by each one of us every now and then. Coordinating system is required. So the polar coordinate system is useful when why whereas in an x-axis and y-axis what happens when you plot it down, or when can you plot it down on a circular axis? How does it make sense? Both of them has their own utility. It depends upon your audiences, how literate are they, or depends upon the graphical representation of the data that comes around it. The polar coordinate system is also useful wherein you depict the whole map and probably circulate exactly what is happening in a particular point of time. Let's say July, October, April, January. What is the temperature heat map that goes around it? This will show it to you that Chicago is one of those places which has the most least variation of the extreme temperature. Absolutely. Whereas Death Valley is one of the places which has extremes of temperature, too hot and too cold at the same time within the whole year. So that needs to be understood which is hospitable place and which is not. This particular polar coordinate system will help you to mark it. Adding a full scale to zero is something which we would always want to have it. If we have something called zero, it gives you a reference point as how to go around it. So why transform? Original data is always on a linear scale. Long transform data would be a linear scale, probably, but original data can also be in a logarithmic scale. This is where you need to point it out and into a log scale. Log transformations to see the relationship. Look what is happening. It is an amalgamation of so many plots, so many dots at one places. So scale them and dimension to them. What I mean by adding dimension is add, give them some character, so you will be having as different colors, different pointers, different aspect, different shapes. Everything might will have a different understanding and meaning to it. So we can color and probably distinguish a group. Let's say Okabe ITU. There is this specific color. We have the color blue or dark blue, the GG plot that comes around it. Colors can show data in a different light, different perspective. Color blue, blues, heat, reddish, and so on and so forth. Beware, not thinking about color blindness. This is another thing that comes around it. Often we come up with very impactful, colorful graphs, but then there are people who are color blind. Now, for them, it is almost into a various shades of gray that comes around it. How do we come across as such? Never, I again repeat, never use the red color or the green color, because that becomes bit of a confusion. Use redundant coding. Let's say shapes and size. Can we remove the color concept altogether and use different shape? Let's say hexagon, triangle, pentagon, or probably rectangle, square, circle. What we are looking into it, we can come up with it. Then we have something called redundant coding. This is another thing that comes around it. When you're mapping some certain point or missing certain point in a time series, if you are going to rank it out, there might be certain things which the data has not been captured completely. So look what is happening with the 5 years, 15 years, 35 years, and a 50 years lifespan. The coldbrewer.org. Please visit this particular website, colorbrewer.org, color COLORBREWER.org. Gives you a wonderful idea of how to utilize cartograph or maps and the color that comes around it as on when on basis. You can always visit flowingdata.com also to tag and color your maps. Again, I repeat, flowingdata.com, FLOWING, flowing data, DATA.com. And probably the touch of color gives that spark of intensity to your map. That is what we are all looking forward to. Colors can bring another dimensions. Absolutely, it can capture the attention and probably capture the fascinations of the customers or decision makers. Statistical fit to it understanding. Here, at times there might be a lot of plots that needs to be cluttered. Can you give a meaning to it, shape to it, size to it? Give your statistical inference in between as a line that I've drawn up for your understanding. So yes, facets to add fine grained information on a new dimensions, be it on a time scale basis, be on a circular basis, shape basis. Facets adds information, adds characters, adds understanding. Remember, information is what is required to come to a conclusion. Conclusion help us to come to a decision thereby. And lastly but not leastly, we should have a minimalistic presentation. Not everything should be stuffed in a one particular graph. Above else, show data. Absolutely, data is based on which the graph has been built upon. So never ignore data. Maximize data ink ratio per se. It is non data ink at all. It is redundant data ink as on when on basis. With this, I come to an end of this presentation of data visualization. I hope I have been opened your eyes to a different perspective of how representation of of data can be done in a much more better and effective fashion. Thank you for watching this video till the very end.